My name is S. Robert Applebaum. I've been a lifetime New Yorker, and I'm about to tell you the story of my life. I was born in the Lower East Side, lived there for a short while, and then my family moved us to the Bronx. In the 30s and 40s, the Bronx was very poor. It was inhabited basically by Jews, Italians, and Irish. Those were the three groups that made up not only the Bronx, but most of the other boroughs as well. And we lived next to each other, but we all had separate neighborhoods, almost like it was tribal at that point. But we got along with each other. I was probably one of the members of about a group of 10 to 12 fellows. There was never a shortage of good friends. It was all fellows, no girls included. We were shy of the girls. I hung out with my brother a lot. We're only 2 years apart in age, so sometimes we can even intermingle friendships. His friends could be mine, my friends could be his. My mother was a sweet, kind woman who watched out for her 3 children wonderfully. My father was a hardworking man who could be very dominant, but he was very, very kindly. He loved his children. When we became sick, he stayed with us all night long, making sure we were all right. And we struggled. One thing happened. I was delivering a package in Manhattan. I must have been about 20 years old then. And it started to pour. And I ran into a school, an elementary school entrance, and went into the hallway there. And it smelled of that wood that I was so familiar with in the public schools I went to. And it brought a kind of nostalgia to me. And I said to myself, I want to be part of this environment. I love it. A simple thing like that actually made me think of being a teacher for the first time. And I kind of pursued it from then on.
How did you meet Grandma?
Grandma, I met her on the street. She was walking in front of me at about 11 o'clock at night. She came from a movie, and I was coming from my friend Arthur's apartment. And I was walking behind her about 20 or 30 feet, and it was sort of dark down that street, but women weren't worried about crime in those days. So I looked at her from a background, and I liked her figure. She had a very nice figure. I couldn't see her face. So anyway, I decided to walk up and talk to her. And I caught up with her, and there she was. And I said, hello, do you mind if I walk? Do you mind if I walk with you? And she looked at me. She said, it's a free country. And I said, okay. And I knew that was a very good sign for me. And then we stood at her stoop and spoke for about a half hour to an hour. And that was the beginning of the most wonderful relationship I could possibly have imagined for the next 64 years of marriage. We used to go to the movies a lot. We went to the Bronx Zoo very often. We used to go to Manhattan. I wasn't making much money, so we were limited in where we can go, but we always went to off-Broadway plays. We went to neighborhood things. There were often little neighborhood cultural things, and we hung out with her family. I hung out with her family a lot. I proposed to Grandma by asking, will you marry me? She was fully prepared for it, and she said, yes. Yes. It was an easy proposal. I was just getting my teaching job then, so I felt I could make a living for the two of us, and I could support her. In those days, girls didn't work. So I felt that once I got my teaching job, I could support whatever family I would have, even though I was still not going to be making much money. My wife, Eleonora, lived 2 blocks away from me. So when we married, we inherited her sister's apartment. They moved out to Brentwood, Long Island, and we simply stayed in the 6-room apartment. We stayed there for 5 years, and the neighborhood changed drastically. It became a dangerous neighborhood. All the good times were gone in that neighborhood. So we moved to Riverdale in the was $83 a month, which was a lot in those days. $83, yes. After the Bronx, we moved to Bayside, Queens. We bought a home, a very nice home, for $24,000, which I could afford. Our mortgage and taxes, get this, mortgage and taxes were $120 a month. New York City taxes were incredibly cheap. So we lived there for 8 years. And then we moved because I had aspirations for a better neighborhood, even though Bayside was a good neighborhood, and my two daughters liked living there. Lisa, my youngest one, was 6 years old when we moved out of Bayside, and Nina was 8 years old. So we moved to Great Neck. Supposedly it would have been way beyond our means, but we got a good deal on a house, a very good house to live in. And we lived in Great Neck for the next 11 years, which was, I loved Great Neck. Beautiful, clean neighborhood, was aesthetic almost. I had a friend who lived in Manhattan, and he told me that there were some openings in apartments, and why don't I apply? He lived here, and he said he loved living here in the Chelsea area. So I applied, and 4.5 years later, they called us for an apartment, and we moved in 1984, we moved into Manhattan, and have lived here since then. I was very worried when we first moved here because I didn't know if we'd have enough room for our apartment, to all the stuff we needed in our apartment. We gave some of it away, I remember, and we moved here, a nice 2-bedroom apartment. The girls loved it. I think both of them were happy to get into Manhattan. And I loved Manhattan, I always loved Manhattan. And my wife, she was all right with it too. She liked her house though. And so we moved in, and everything worked out very well, and it was affordable for me and my family. What I'm most proud of in life is that I've been able to maintain a kind of happiness. I had the best of wives, 2 wonderful girls as my daughters. I loved music, loved reading. I always had good friends. I loved my family. And I just think I had a good life.